Yeah. See, this is where my mind goes. Because I look back at a lot of the movies that came out during that time. Like we said, like those directors you just named. I forgot what you just said. But I look back at those movies and I watch. I'm like, yeah, they're good, but they're not like just these amazing films that everybody just needs to watch. And
well,
they're
that's
just legends.
subjective on your part, though.
Exactly, and I think that it's like they were legends. They are legends.
I think
of course.
it's because you're used to a certain type of pacing we have nowadays.
It's not even that. It's just. I think that whenever there is a dry with art, like there's no art coming out, they're going to be people that make big movies and are be legends because people just want to watch movies, you know.
Now, here's the thing, no, a lot of those movies fucking slap. I think it's just because you don't like as slow a pace as there was then.
I'm not gonna say that. I like older movies. Those older movies that I do enjoy that I've seen, but there are also some that people think are just legendary that I just don't like.
Well, I'm saying I think a lot of the reasons you don't like it's because it has to do with like this.
But we can't say that
thing of like the pacing feels probably different than what you're used to.
But you can't say that when there are movies that I like that have the pacing or that are made in the same years or same times. I just think that the movies are just not that good to me. Rather be the writing.
So I'm just thinking of like Scorsese films from back then, fucking slapped. Francis Ford Coppola movies back then.
I think
Francis Ford Coppola had a fucking run in the 70s.
So this is going to be a controversial take.
Get on that ledge by yourself.
I think that we need to start looking back a lot of these directors and movies that we think are just legendary legends, amazing movies, and like kind of like rethink how we feel about these movies, because are they that legendary?
Yeah, you can get on this ledge by yourself.
Like, are they like? I'm looking at Christopher Nolan, right? I love, man, what's that movie where they go in space? Interstellar. I love Interstellar. I think that's a great ass movie. I look back. I rewatched Inception. I mean, it's cool.
I think that is just your take.
I guess, but I just
because I still have Inception. Still,
when's the last time you seen it?
We've already had this discussion.
I know, but
it was like a year or two ago.
I liked Inception when it came out. I thought it was a cool movie. I rewatched it and I look back and I'm just like it's like music. You know how music comes out and it's like, oh, this song was like huge and people loved it and it probably didn't age that well. That's how I feel. That's how I feel about a lot of movies, a lot of directors, but nobody says that in the film industry. Nobody, that conversation does not happen. And I'm like, maybe
no, they'll talk about how films don't age that well. But here's the thing: is like, especially like a lot of comedies, people will talk about like Ace Ventura did not age well.
I just don't hear that a lot with.
But no, here's the. I think here is the point you're kind of missing is one. If everyone else except for you thinks that these are good, then I think it's just you don't like it. But here's the other thing: is like you're also not taking an effect of what did that film, going back to our whole thing about like art and what it means for a time or what it means for culture.
Yeah.
These films also signify that. It's like you look back and go to whatever time Goodfellas came out. You think like people who have seen that film back then get that emotion of connection to it. And then people who might be coming afterwards might go back and look at, watch that movie and you get a feel for what it was like then. And then people will get like really nostalgic for a time that they didn't live in.
Yeah.
So I think you're forgetting that fact of like the films that people talk about like that. There is a reason why it's kind of underlying that you just may not feel a connection towards.
You know what I think, why I feel that way. I think it's because it's kind of what you're saying. I think it's because the film industry has been only available to a certain
for sure.
demographic, to where now it's kind of opening up to where.
Oh, for sure, Hollywood is elitist as fuck.
So like if you think about like, for example, I feel like a lot of people that are in my culture rewatch some of these movies that like the industry thinks are just legendary, amazing. We're gonna look back and be like, it's all right. Yeah. But the movies that we like are in our culture, we're gonna like, oh, it's legendary. I think that's just kind of how it is. And I feel like when people come into this industry, there's already a set list of directors that are just legendary, that we just have to say are legendary, amazing, like Christopher Nolan or whatever.
Yeah, well, that's the current day person.
Yeah.
You'd just be like, this person's great.
Yeah, just
like I'm sure my fucking clip of saying Christopher Nolan ruined the film industry is gonna go. I'm gonna get cooked for that at some point.
but I'm just saying, like, and for me, this experience only happens in the film industry. I don't see this happening in any other industry. Really,
it happens in music, certain genres.
Certain genres, and I'm just like, okay, maybe it's time to like rethink this list that we have, because, like, for example, even Quentin Tarantino. I like Quentin Tarantino's movies. I think Kill Bill is great. One of my top 5 favorite
One
movies.
is still better than 2, but continue.
One of my top 5. I put them two together, but one of my top 5 favorite movies. I like what's the movie where there's the Jewish and the
Glorious Bastards. I fucking love that movie.
See, I like Glorious Bastards, but when I saw them and when I like, it wasn't just like this overwhelming of greatness.
I fucking love that movie.
That when I came in this industry, Quentin Tarantino was already on that pedestal of, this amazing greatness, and I'm like, okay, I guess I got to put him there because people say so, and I feel like a lot of people do that.
I think there is some level of like, you pay respect to the people that came before you because they've built the path. It's kind of like NBA players coming in now, like whenever they hear people say like, oh, this player is better, or like this player was great back in their day. And then being like, well, I'm better than that fucking person, so fuck them. But here's the thing is like, because that person existed, you're able to make $30 million on your contract while they could only make $1 million.
Sure.
So it's like you still pay respect because your game may or may not have some built from the foundation that they may have contributed to at their time.
Sure.
Because you got to think is within film, when you're being a director or writing, there is a language to film. There's a pacing. There are different pacings to film. And all of those were set by people that came before. So whenever you're making something, you have to consider that people have been conditioned by what's come before when you're making something, whether it be purposely breaking it or following behind, like doing the same pacing, that type of shit. So there's a level of like, you pay respect to the people that came before you because they paved the road in a time that was different.
Sure.
And of course, I can get the fact of like, it's probably harder to connect to certain types of films because it's like, even now it's hard to get into the film industry because we're not in the film industry yet, technically.
Yeah.
Where if you don't have certain backgrounds, because here to nowadays, if you want to go through the traditional route of working up on the business side, you have to go and basically be an unpaid intern or be only paid like $12 an hour working in someone's office. But here's the thing, you can't live in LA on that amount of money.
Yeah.
Whatever the minimum wage is, like 15. You can't live on that. So the only people that get to take those jobs are people who have a wealthy enough family that subsidizes their dream.
Yeah.
And that typically means they have enough money where they don't give a fuck that they're probably wasting money on this person's dream. So the people that get into the doors are the people that have a similar experience because they all have a similar experience of coming from wealth.
Yeah.
And we know typically people that come from wealth have other things that are very common in their background.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know what point you're making.
I'm basically saying is like, even nowadays, we still have the same issue when it comes to a lot of people that go in through the traditional route in the film industry have a similar background of coming from a wealthy family. Yeah. Whereas before is also pretty similar too. Yeah. But it was kind of, I started going one way and then my brain took me another. That's called ADHD. My whole point was like, I get why you may not feel like a level of connection to some older films, especially. Because also like, and I went back and watched The Searchers. People go and say this is one of the greatest films of all time. I enjoyed it, but I don't look at it the same way. But then I can also like, if I'm going to try to break it down from like a very logical thought process of like, if I was making a film, I think it's a very like helpful to go back and watch those and try to like reverse engineer what they did based on what things they had limited to them at their time. I don't know. And also like, you got to think what came before them. Yeah. When they made that film. Sure. So that plays a lot of it. And of course, when you go back and watch older films, it's like, God damn, this is racist. Sure. Shit. Like I was going down this whole like video series that was going down the history of film, like the film industry. Yeah. So like the film that broke like the original way of things being done was of course probably the most racist film of all time, Birth of a Nation. Yeah. like the moving of the camera, how the blocking everything, that was like the first film that really took it to another level.
And why do you say it's important to know that, to watch that?
Well, my point is like you see how things progressed before you. That way you can kind of get an idea of like, okay, how could we progress what we have now to another thing?
I guess.
It's like, I guess the way of thinking about it is like whenever you're going through school and learning like English, you start learning the structures of it, and you kind of get to see like, you learn all the different structures of it.
Yeah.
And you get to hear how it's kind of supposed to be said, but then you also have the experience of like what's current of like how things will be said.
And why is that important?
I think it's like, it's hard to explain what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I hear people like for when you go to film school, you look at all these old movies and learn, and I always wonder, why is that important to do that? I always wonder that.
I guess here's an example. Whenever we as like a native English speaker break the rules of English, it sounds natural because we have had our entire lives of being around the language.
Yeah.
We learned all the basics of how the grammatical structure of English works. Like, think about like adjectives to a noun. There is actually, you don't even realize it, but there is actually a grammatical rule that they don't teach in school, but tells you how the order of adjectives go.
See, so
it's like the big red dog. You just intuitively know that, right? But if you heard somebody whose like second language is English, they might say red big dog. It doesn't sound as natural because doesn't sound as natural because we've been conditioned to see it a certain way or hear it a certain way. But to them, they don't realize that rule exists. And we can tell based on hearing them that they don't have the entire understanding of the language itself.
So
I guess that's my point is like, if we decided to just break a rule and it might become slang going forward because we broke an English rule and people liked how we did it. Whereas someone whose second language is English, they might do the same thing, but it might not sound as natural and it wouldn't become a new thing.
Yeah. So I get understanding. I get understanding how things work and why things work.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the point you're trying to say. We watch old movies to understand why things worked.
Yeah, and then you're able to see how they might have broke how things were done at that time, and then that might give you an inspiration on how you could break the current way things are being done.
Sure. And I get that, but I still have the thought of, okay, I can look back at this movie, I guess, and see how it worked, which is cool, and it is a good thing to do. But at the same time, it's like it's not really that important to me, you know. Like when people say The Searchers is the greatest movie ever made, okay, but it doesn't have to be the greatest movie ever made. And I feel like when people go into this industry, we just put these things on this pedestal because people have been saying it.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Like Christopher, like whenever you hear people like, what are your 5 favorite directors?
Yeah, it's always the same people.
Always the same people.
Well, here's also the thing is that business doesn't market directors like they used to.
Sure. But
there was an era where they would actually market directors a lot, and those are the directors that we all think of now.
Sure, but
in this era, they market IP, and then they still market actors because that's just how it's always going to be. But they market IP for the most part now.
Yeah,
and they'll market a movie as a product, but they don't market like the creators behind it.
Sure, and I'm not mad at people having, people are liking Christopher Nolan movies or Steven Spielberg movies or whatever. I'm not mad at that. But I just want to know the intent of why you like or why you pick these people. Is it because you heard when you came into the industry about these movies and then you watched it and then you just got kind of brainwashed to liking them and just thinking like they're the best? I feel like a lot of people do that with Quentin Tarantino. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like a lot of people just get kind of like brainwashed and like, oh, it's creative, it's cool.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people do that. And that's my point. That's my point of what I'm trying to say. And I don't know.
Oh yeah, we've talked about that. Like when people like start trying to write their own shit, they always fucking try to sound like Tarantino.
Yeah. And it's just like this is what I be thinking about, and I always trying to break down like why people like things or why things matter to people, and I always get confused. But yeah, you made some good points of like understanding why